Thank you very warmly, Assistant Commissioner of Prisons, Mr. Scanterbury, for your very kind introduction. Let me recognize the presence of our Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of National Security, Madam Duki Sintra Maharaj, Mr. Deoprasad Ramota, Commissioner of Prisons, all other members of the executive of the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service, in particular the 3 deputies who are here with us, and other officers of the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service, and of course all other ranks, every one of you. Mr. Gerardo Noto, United Nations Development Program Resident Representative ad interim in Trinidad and Tobago, other officials of the UNDP, as it is more easily described, country representative of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture, Madam Diana Francis, and other officials of that agency, Mr. Chris Sanka and other representatives of the Solaris Greenhouse Agricultures Limited, all of the inmates who are with us this morning, and the residents properly called, specially invited guests, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I received and gleefully accepted your invitation to be here again this morning, and I stress the word again because this is just another of the many installments of the excellent work conducted by the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service in the context of the, since 2002, adoption as government's policy, the principle of restorative justice, aiming at rehabilitation, reintegration, and preparing those who come to these institutions for their eventual return to the society better than when they came. Today, we are gathered, as you would have heard earlier, to oversee and to enjoy the distribution ceremony and the inauguration of the Women's Prison Greenhouse and the Youth Training and Rehabilitation Center's Grow Room. And this, as you would have heard earlier, and for those who know, you already know, this is an initiative that was born out of, driven by the UNDP in collaboration with the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service in the context of the philosophy that I described a moment ago. Today's celebration, of course, is multifaceted in that 48 inmates and residents and 9 prison officers received certificates for successfully completing the course entitled Introduction to Agriculture, which focused on modern agricultural approaches to hydroponics and indoor farming. The prison service has, as far as I can recall, and certainly since my interfacing with it as a public official, has been involved in the business of agriculture. But this suggests that we are now moving into higher levels, new realms, modern approaches to agriculture. And this in itself is not only necessary, but in my view, commendable, because this program, like all others that are dispensed for the benefit of those who are in occupation of these facilities, is designed to give you some additional or if you hadn't any before, some brand new skill that you can convert into an income earning business enterprise to secure your financial future when you would have left this institution. And on that basis, it is obvious, but I would restate it, it ought not to be taken lightly. A big question for every human being, a big question for every business organization is, what does the future hold? How will I earn my bread? How will I earn income? Would I be a sluggard? Would I be, as I read recently, a hikomori? That is a concept in Japan, a phenomenon well known to that society. They estimate that there are about 700,000 of them now. And if you look at the dictionary meaning of that word, hikomori, a Japanese word, you will see it represents a group of particularly young people who, for some strange reason or reasons, just sit and vegetate, watching the days, the weeks, the months, the years go by. Not vagrants, not crazy, but just sitting and not making use of the many gifts that the Almighty God has bestowed upon every single one of us in one way or the next. So a big question for all of us is, what does the future hold? For me, I think when my time for retirement comes, I would be able to say truthfully to God, to man, to my family, and most of all to myself, I have worked, I have contributed. I've contributed to the development of the organizations of which I was a part, and certainly to Trinidad and Tobago. It's a good feeling. And it's good for the country, it's good for you, good for your family, good for all of us. I'm happily informed that the YTRC, Youth Training and Rehabilitation Center Grow Room, aims to cultivate various crops involving and including chive and celery, shadow benny, rosemary, and such. And the Women's Prison Greenhouse aims to cultivate tomatoes, melangons, sweet peppers, hot peppers, pak choy, cabbage, lettuce, and spinach. Different kinds of products from the two institutions, because when this program was born and I was introduced to it, I think it was early last year or year before, and I saw the beauty, and I saw the potential, and I saw the therapeutic value, and I saw the enthusiasm on the part of the women from the women's prison who participated in it. And I saw the enthusiasm and the love of the officers, the women officers of the prison service who were involved in this program. The commissioner and I easily agreed, and those who were involved in that program, that from that little seed, if I may use an agricultural metaphor, we can blossom many more seeds, and it can grow to wonderful things, perhaps to the point where the prison can become self-sufficient in the production of wholesome, healthy food to treat with the inmates and its occupants in a progressive, healthy, wholesome manner. And that thought, that vision, stimulated us. And we agreed that we will take action, we will take steps to ensure that that seed was allowed to grow. And don't allow Sheriff John Brown, who always hated I. You know Bob Marley sing? Every time I plant a seed, he say, kill it before it grows. And keep Sheriff John Brown away from it. So I am more than happy to be here again today to see advancement in this project along the lines as we have said. Distinguished attendees here this morning, we are all here and together bound by the same vision and the same goal. That is to eventually find a reduction, if not out and out, removal of recidivism, or the revolving door syndrome. These walls, these institutions have had people. I know a particular youngster who I grew up with in the Belmont area, and he virtually spent, I don't know if he's still alive, but he virtually spent all his life in the prison, in and out, in for and out for a short period and back in again. Once I visited a prison and I saw him when I became minister. I had a conversation with him, and he told me that is what his life was. Our goal, our aim, is to make the visit by you the one and the only. The business of recidivism is not on. The Ministry of National Security will support any initiative that is aimed at creating an environment that enables that to be achieved, and by extension, your personal growth, your development, the realization of your own God-given potential or potentials, and to make this society a safer and a better place. The idea is to work with you, to help you to discover the talents, the blessings, the attributes that our good and generous God has bestowed upon you, and to assist you to maximize them, whatever they might be. Whether it's in academics, whether it's in sport, whether it's in some technical, vocational pursuit, whether it is in culture. Our job, our business, is to assist you in finding yourself, loving yourself, taking a decision to grow yourself, and to praise and please God in the process. It is to help you to build your character. Because we have seen, we live in a world, where it is now clear to all of us that age, sex, religion, academic acquisition, all of those things are necessary, beautiful, commendable, and fine. But at the heart of it all, it is the man, the I, the spirit. What is that spirit resonating? Evil, wastefulness, hate, destruction, burn down this, burn down that, kill this, kill that. Or is it to build one's self-love, one's self-esteem, to imbue the attribute, the principle of strength and courage to love, to give love, to be loved, to be respected and not feared? There are a lot of people walk around in communities in Trinidad and Tobago and the world, and people cringe and people duck from them and all that, and they feel good about them ignorant self. But it is not about respect. Sometimes they mistakenly call it respect, but it's not respect. It's fear, sometimes even fear for themselves, because sometimes the things they may think about doing, if they do it, they will end up in a kind of a situation where nothing has to do with respect. And to accept that we all make mistakes, we come to terms with them, and we vow to do them no more. That is real strength. On which point, I must add that that requires the capacity, the higher power to forgive sometimes people the closest to you. your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, to forgive and to accept forgiveness when it is directed at you. I came here this morning and was introduced again to Romel Lizama, a resident of this space, by the Commissioner of Prisons. I spoke to Romel outside in the company of Mr. Noto and the Prison Commissioner. And having spoken with him, I can quite easily have returned to my vehicle and returned to my workstation feeling completely satisfied, confidently satisfied that God is at work. That the project undertaken by this prison service is working quite successfully. Romel told us that he is a number 17 contestant in tomorrow's national semi-finals in the Monarch competition. When I was here for breakfast, just before Christmas, was it? With a number of other persons who came to this institution with love in their souls to give and to share. And we spent some time with the residents at the YTRC. I had met Romel, I'd heard about him, I'd met others, spoke to, interfaced with some of you. And I had heard that he was a multi-talented man. The Prisons Commissioner put it this way, he said, anything you put Romel and his hands and his mind and his heart to, he's going to excel at it. So I invited Romel to sing me a verse in this song he's going to be them with tomorrow, right? And Romel began, and I was taken right on back. The song repeated the word evil and to eschew evil, to walk away from it. In his first verse alone, he so properly, like Calypsonians and these cultural icons can do, he was able to capture all of his past in the first verse and the difficult circumstances he grew up in and the things he saw. And I remember a line that says the last sight he had of his father was a bloody one. And tomorrow he will be out there to share that with the national community. And while he was speaking, I remembered Malcolm X again. I had mentioned the name Malcolm X when I was here for breakfast on that occasion, and sadly discovered that Malcolm X, long gone, perhaps beginning to be forgotten by some. And I remembered Malcolm X again this morning, a young man who had very difficult beginnings in the United States. The Ku Klux Klan killed his father, who was a preacher, a liberator of black people. And that was a crime in America in those days, so they burnt down his house and they put him on a train line and had him pulverized. Malcolm and they would have seen all of that. And then it was left to Malcolm's mother to take care of Malcolm and his 5 or so siblings. And of course, the poor woman going through the stresses of life as a black woman in America without a husband, having gone through the trauma she went through. And these 5 picked me to deal with. She started to show signs, according to the US authorities, of mental degradation. And it got to the point where they decided now they had to take her children from her, adding to her trauma and her burden. And these children were sent to different institutions all over America. Malcolm was one, of course, of them. And when he was released from that institution, still didn't find himself. And he went into New York in Harlem and became a notorious criminal, involved in everything that was bad and criminal and evil and perverted. The book describes it, the autobiography of Malcolm X, which I read as a teenager and reread as an adult, and got far more from it on the second read, because it is said that you get from a book that which you bring to it. So by the time I read it the second time, I had brought a little more maturity, a better understanding of myself and life, and therefore was able to better understand the book. But the initial understanding was good enough for me. And Malcolm X eventually, after doing all kinds of sick, perverted things, found himself in a jail, Lansing prison, I think it was, for 15 years. And it was during that time, with the body locked in. Now it's only the spirit and the mind, like Nelson Mandela, that could come to bear, because the body is now confined. And Malcolm X began to find himself and to grow, developed character. When they shut down the lights in the cells at 10 o'clock in the night, he was illiterate when he went in there, couldn't read. But he had a voracious appetite for learning while he was in there. They said he read the dictionary from cover to cover, learned them. He read the Quran from cover to cover, the Bible too, and became an outstanding debater inside of the prison, sowing the seeds for a greater life. When they shut down the lights, it is said Malcolm X would lie down by the door, put his hand outside in the corridor with the shaft of light that came down there, and read through the night, many nights. I mean, a real story, which is why I commended it to the youngsters. And I remembered Malcolm X again this morning, who went on, of course, to be an outstanding man of religious pursuit, a minister in the Islamic religion, led the popular Temple No. 7 in New York, and grew that organization and became an outstanding spokesman for black people's rights in a very racist and divided United States of America. And today, his wisdom, his words, and in particular, he said, which I always remember, two things I always remember. Because even as a teenager, I started playing around with cigarettes and trying it out. I mean, people did that, right? And then in that book, the story was told about Malcolm X driving his automobile as a minister, and Alex Haley, who wrote the autobiography, came into the vehicle a Sunday evening with a cigarette in his hand. And the very disciplined, non-smoking, non-drinking, new Malcolm looked over at him and simply said, "That makes you the first person that would have ever lit or smoked a cigarette in this car." Alex Haley said when he heard that, Malcolm didn't tell him put it out or get out, but he knew instinctively that was not on. And Malcolm X went on to describe smoking as a situation where there's fire on one end and a fool on the other. When I read that as a teenager, it changed my life in respect of playing around with cigarettes. Whatever I had, I tore them up, and I vowed never to be a fool again. Now, I ain't calling nobody no fool, you know, you always turn my words, because I don't know who used them or who not. I'm talking about me. But many times in my adult life, there's been this discussion, and up to about 2 weeks ago, in grappling with this crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago, various theorists, academics, opinion makers, shapers have ventured their views as to why we are faced with this. 65 murders in the first few weeks, more than the days of the year. 605 murders last year. We killing each other. Son chopping father, brother shooting brother. Craziness. And everyone is trying to find out what is at the heart of that. So, Pearl Into Springer, a very wise and beautiful sister, about 2 weeks ago, expressed the view that some of it has to do with the history and the experience of the ex-slave, particularly the young African in Trinidad and Tobago, and I venture to say the world. She may be right. These are matters under constant review and examination. But Malcolm X And this is not to gainsay or to diminish what she has said, because there must be some serious validity inside of there. But Malcolm X issued a quotation that I should never forget. And he said, being ignorant, being a slave, may not be your fault, but remaining ignorant and remaining a slave is. And I understood that to mean, like him, when you mature and you get past the hot-headedness of youth, where somebody could tell you be a gun sack or be a mule or go and do this and go and do that and go, and you're like a little fool and go and do it. When maturity sets in and the realities of the life sets in, when you now have a woman and a child or two and thinking about getting married and all of these things, you then realize that you have to take responsibility for yourself. And you can't blame your mother. There comes a point where you can't blame your mother or blame your father or blame the government or the member of parliament or your aunt or your grandmother or blame society. You have to take responsibility for yourself. Being ignorant, being deprived, being badly brought up may not have been your fault, but remaining those ways certainly is. David Rudder, and in this Calypso season I'm entitled to use a line or two from him, that great icon who has represented this country and continues to do so with great distinction in the field of culture. He too, like Malcolm X, said two things upon which I will now close. In the song Calypso Music, he says, can you hear a distant drum dancing on the laughter of a melody? I don't think anybody but a Calypsonian could put it so nicely. Heard that? Can you hear a distant drum dancing on the laughter of a melody? And I remember that because while today the issue is agriculture, tomorrow it could have been sport, or upholstery, or academics, or public speaking. It is like the distant drum, but it is dancing on the laughter of the philosophy of restorative justice, rehabilitation, preparation for reintegration into the society as a productive, useful, strong, clean, courageous, confident, don't have to kill nobody, don't have to thief to be a winner, don't have to thief to get enough, don't have to behave like nothing else but a dignified human being, winning genuine respect from all those who took time to look. That's what this is all about. And David Rudder also said, if you would permit me for the Calypso metaphor, in the song, I think it's called Message to the Pan Man. Mr. Pan Man talks about the pan coming out of the old oil drum. Laventel, the likes of Spree, Simon and Day, now take this thing, this rubbish. Huh? Yeah. And shaped it, knock it around, heat it, and created the only new instrument in the 20th century. And he says to describe that greatness, out of a muddy pond, 10,000 flowers bloom. So while we may be in a muddy pond, while we may have been in a muddy pond, you and I, with the help of God, and in programs like this, have the opportunity, every opportunity, to become one of the 10,000 flowers to bloom. Good luck. God bless. It was a pleasure being with you, and it is my prayer, as well as all of your family, all of the society, that this program and more like it will assist you in finding yourself and maximizing the potential that already rests within you. Good luck and God bless. I thank you.